What is up, everybody? Purple and Gold podcast for Sunday, March 29th. An uneven weekend overall in LSU athletics, but the LSU Tigers baseball team did rally to take 2 out of 3 from Kentucky. Let's recap everything that happened on the weekend. And let's actually start with a little bit of bad news a big bit of bad news from the LSU football team. LSU edge rusher Gabriel Relaford suffered an ACL tear in spring practice, and that likely is going to sideline him for the season. I suppose that in a 9 to 10 to 11 month recovery, there is a sort of an off chance he could get back very, very late in the season if LSU was playing meaningful football in December, but this likely puts him out for the year. This will probably mean that Prince Uman Mielen and Jordan Ross will be your starting edge rushers. Obviously, a guy like Lamar Brown, as a 5-star freshman, will come in here and possibly be counted on to play some. LSU had a couple of other edge transfers who were a little further down the depth chart. Guys from, Achilles Woods from South Alabama, Jaden Bryant from South Carolina. These guys will have to step up and potentially play some sort of a role, at least to give LSU some depth at the edge position. So that was a real bummer. The other real bummer of the weekend happened on Friday night when LSU's dreams of a women's Final Four died at the hands of Duke on a buzzer beater. LSU lost 87-85. Duke outplayed LSU for much of the game and had a 7-point lead in the fourth quarter when LSU chipped away and chipped away and chipped away and took the lead 85-84. Duke had a last possession. They missed a 3. Unfortunately, LSU could not corral the rebound. It went out of bounds. Duke inbounded the ball with a little under 3 seconds left and was able to shake free and make a shot that went all the way around the rim and went down. Great women's college basketball game that LSU came up on the short side of, and that ends the incredible career of Flau'jae Johnson, among Amira Joyner and others. LSU's going to go out and hit the transfer portal hard, I would imagine, for some bigs. I think they'll try to reel in 5-star Caroline Bradley, but they're going to need to have some instant impact bigs from the transfer portal. There was a rather erroneous report during the game from what I can only describe as Twitter trolls or bots, saying that Kim Mulkey was going to retire after the season. She emphatically denied that in the post-game press conference, and her quote was that she will be at LSU until she either can't put a product on the floor anymore worthy of LSU, or she is fired, or she is dead, basically, is what she said. So she talked about hiring 2 new coaches to replace Gary Redus and Daphne Mitchell. And so the expectation is that LSU's women's basketball program will continue on. That ship will get righted. Coaches will be hired. Transfers will be brought in. And LSU's women's basketball team will be very good next year. I do think the genesis of some of the rumors probably is in relation to somewhat of an icy answer that she gave in the pregame press conference when she was asked to comment on the Will Wade stuff. And she said she was just going to focus on her team. And then as her and Kramer were in the bowels of the arena in Sacramento, she walked past Michael Cobble and Reed Darcy, Cobble from WBRZ in Baton Rouge, Reed Darcy from The Advocate, and she was joking with them, sort of snidely saying, shouldn't you be back in Baton Rouge covering Will Wade? I think there's a thought that all of the money being spent to buy out Matt McMahon, all of the money being spent to bring Will Wade here will result in men's basketball slash baseball, because Jay's argued for more money too, getting a bigger piece of the pie, and women's basketball getting a lesser piece of the pie. I can only tell you that Kim Mulkey has 4 national championships. She has a national championship at LSU. I understand everything that Jay Johnson has done, but Kim Mulkey is the most accomplished coach on this campus, and I can't imagine they're going to take a significant amount of the revenue share away from her. But I think all of this is where some of that started, and I think you just had some Twitter trolls maybe trying to get ahead of a story that ultimately didn't exist. Let's move on to LSU's baseball team. So the Tigers, of course, on Friday night dropped a tough game to Kentucky, 7-4. Kentucky starter Jackson Jelkin was very good after LSU sort of let him off the hook in the third inning. Kentucky was up 4-0. LSU had scored 2 runs. They had first and third, 1 out, and Zach York grounded into a double play. I think Jelkin retired like 18 of the next 15 or 16 of the next 17 or 18 hitters, and LSU never really threatened again until he was out of the game in the ninth. LSU did score 2 runs off one of Kentucky's better relievers to make it from 7-2 to 7-4 to 7-4, but ultimately LSU fell. LSU bounced back in a major way on Saturday. William Schmidt and Zach Cowan combined to dominate Kentucky in one of the better games that LSU played all year, and LSU cruised to a 7-0 victory, setting up today's rubber match. What was interesting about this was, Friday night was a bad night in LSU sports, right? The softball team lost in extra innings, women's basketball team lost, baseball team lost, and the baseball team was 2-5, and you're thinking, okay, there's no Cooper Moore, Kason Evans' start is already over. How are they going to win these next 2 games? And you start thinking that maybe they're not, and you start trying to do some math in your head. Well, they got down 7-0 today, and you're thinking, okay, LSU's going to be 3-6 in the league, and this is going to start to get a little bit tough. And the Tigers responded. John Pearson hit a critical grand slam in a 7-1 game to make it 7-5. The Tigers chipped away. Devin Sheeran did a good job in relief. It was 10-7. Derek Curiel hit a homer. It was 10-8. Seth Dardar hit a massive 3-run homer that changed all of the momentum, gave LSU the 11-10 lead. There was a bat flip. There was a warning. Nick Mingione, Kentucky's coach, wanted to know why it was only a warning. Jay Johnson came out to talk to the umpire. Jay Johnson was yelling at Nick Mingione. They're good friends. Jay was yelling, "I'm right effing here. Talk to me. I'm right effing here." Things got emotional and heated. Things had been a little emotional before that. Some of the Kentucky batters were staring down LSU pitchers after walks and base hits. It was a little bit of a chippy series. There is some chippiness with these teams dating back to the 2023 Super Regional, I think. LSU wind up tacking on some more runs. Kentucky's bullpen really imploded late in the game, and LSU went on to win 17-10. Tigers now find themselves 19-10 overall, 4-5 in the league. This was an interesting weekend in the SEC because going into today, LSU and Kentucky was the only rubber match. In every other series, a team had won the first 2 games. And you look around the league today, and Vandy scored 6 runs in the bottom of the ninth, including a walk-off grand slam to beat Tennessee, and they sweep Tennessee. They beat them in 16 innings yesterday, score 6 in the bottom of the ninth today to win. Florida, who swept South Carolina to open the season, was swept by Alabama last weekend. Now they go to Fayetteville and sweep Arkansas. Just a bizarre result based on the way Florida played last weekend. It looks right now, like Mississippi State is putting the finishing touches on a sweep of Ole Miss. Texas swept Oklahoma. So you are looking at the conference leaders, Texas, Mississippi State, and Georgia, all being 7-2. You'll have some 6-3 teams in there. Alabama swept Auburn. So Alabama, who was 0-3 after week number 1, is now 6-3. But certainly LSU's back in the mix now at 4-5. Are all of LSU's problems cured? No. Is LSU back to being on the right track mathematically? Not exactly. With 2 home series, you would have thought they would have been 5-4, or maybe even 6-3. But they've given themselves a chance now to get back into this math. Next week, they will play on the road at Tennessee, who we just pointed out. Tennessee reeling a little bit, coming off a series sweep in Nashville. So that is where we will leave it today. We will have a podcast tomorrow to talk about Will Wade's press conference, which is at noon tomorrow. We will do a podcast afterwards to recap Will Wade's press conference. We may not have a podcast on Tuesday. I will be a little out of pocket that day, so we might not have a full preview of the LSU Southern baseball game, but we might talk a little bit about that tomorrow to get you primed and ready for LSU's midweek game when the Southern Jags come to Alex Box Stadium. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy the rest of your night. As always, be good to one another. Always boot up. And always, 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 go Tigers.